Mr. Huffman, Mr. Morrell, Mr. Cook, Mr. Asajian, and Mr. Jeffries. Okay, file item 111, SCR 26. Clerk will read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 26 by Senator Blakesley relative to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Highway.
Colonel Cook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senate Concurrent Resolution honors the men and women from the Central Coast who served in the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War by establishing the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Highway along certain sections of Highway 101. Specifically, this resolution commemorates the service and sacrifice of those individuals, particularly in the city of Guadalupe, and pays respect to them. 3 individuals that served in Vietnam from Guadalupe lost their lives in Vietnam, and in the region, over 200 were wounded. These veterans will hope that the current veterans hope that this stretch of highway will become an ongoing memorial for veterans and their families, and this resolution will help accomplish that. There is no opposition to this resolution with the exception of the Norwegian caucus, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Okay, strike the roll. The first roll is going to be open for co-authors. First roll will be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. For the record, there are 32 co-authors. We have to take a roll call vote on this item. It's a fiscal bill. So clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, no 0. Measure passes. If members would like to add on as co-authors to that last SCR, they have to come to the clerk's desk and add on manually. They cannot do it. You cannot do it through the kiosk. Okay, file item 103, SB 576 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 576 with amendments by Assemblymember Calderon.
Mr. Cedillo.
The recent amendments are taken for simply chaptering.
The chapter. Seeing and hearing no further debate, and without objection, we could take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. File 109, SB 263. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 263 by Senator Pavley, an act relating to water.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is Senator Pavley's bill about the availability of well drilling logs. You'll recall that this bill came up short a few days back, but some amendments were taken to address the security concerns that were raised about making this information publicly available. And the amendments basically do two things. The first is to very significantly restrict the class of people that can even file a Public Records Act request, and second, to limit what they can do with it. With these two amendments, there is no opposition, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 110, SCR 25. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 25 by Senator Negrete McLeod and others relative to the California Highway Patrol Officer Thomas P. Coleman Memorial Highway.
Mr. Morrell.
Madam Speaker, this resolution has been introduced to a tribute to the good work of the CHP officer Thomas Coleman, who died in the line of duty. Born in West Covina, Mr. Coleman graduated from the same high school I did, of course, approximately 30 years earlier, at Damien High School in Laverne, and then he joined the U.S. Marine Corps. Following his service in the Marine Corps and graduation from the CHP Academy, Officer Coleman served for 7 years in the CHP, the last 2 on a motorcycle detail in the San Bernardino area. Unfortunately, on June 11, 2010, Officer Coleman died as a result of injuries due to a high-speed pursuit. Officer Coleman was known as a wonderful father and husband and is survived by his wife and his 2 children. He was 33 years old when he died. This resolution designates State Route 10 from Texas Street to South Wabash Avenue in San Bernardino County as the CHP Officer Thomas P. Coleman Memorial Highway. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 53, no 0. Measure passes. File item 112 passed temporarily. File item 113, SCR 30. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 30 by Senator Anderson relative to CHP Officer Dan B. Benavides Memorial Highway.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. SCR 30 designates a portion of San Diego Highway Route 15, State Highway Route 15 in the County of San Diego as CHP Officer Dan Benavides Memorial Highway. This resolution honors the life of a fallen officer who served throughout California and gave his life for public safety. Officer Benavides was just approaching his 40th birthday at the time of his death. He leaves behind his wife, their young daughter, his mother and stepfather. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 52, no 0. Measure passes. We're going to go back to file item 112, SCR 28. These are support items, members. File item 112, SCR 28. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 28 by Senator Strickland and others relative to the Federal Correctional Officer Scott Williams Memorial Highway.
Mr. Rasajan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a support, and I do appreciate your support. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 53, no 0. Measure passes. Okay, so we took care of the support. So we're going to start at the top of the Senate third reading. File item 80 passed temporarily. File 81 has been dispensed with. File item 82 passed temporarily. File item 83 passed temporarily. File item 84 has been dispensed with. File items 85 and 86 passed temporarily. File item 87 has gone to the inactive file. File items 88 through 97 have been dispensed with. File item 98 passed temporarily. File item 99 has been dispensed with. File item 100, SB 334, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 334 by Senator DeSaulnier and others, an act relating to elections.
Mr. Gatto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I present to you SB 334 back this is Senate third reading. This is a bill that requires the Secretary of State to include in the ballot pamphlet a list of the 5 highest contributors of $50,000 or more to each committee that is supporting or opposing each ballot initiative. Increasingly, money interests are turning the ballot box into a special interest boondoggle where they try to buy the votes of the public. And I think the public has a right to know when which and what special interests are trying to pay for their democracy. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 19. Measure passes. File item 101 has been dispensed with. File item 102 on the amendments, SB 923. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 923 with amendments by Assemblymember Solorio.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. These amendments are non-substantive Chapter E amendments that become necessary because the bill is double joined with a bill of my own, AB 378. We had some late Senate amendments that caused this re-amend. I ask for your aye vote on these amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. File item 103 has been dispensed with. File item 104 has been dispensed with. File item 105, SB 806. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 806 by the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, an act relating to state compensation, declare an urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Colonel Cook.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In October of 2010, an investigation by the Sacramento Bee discovered several overpayments to members of the California Military Department. Under current law, the statute of limitations to recover overpayments is only 3 years. This bill would extend the statute of limitations from 3 to 6 years. During that time, the state will determine that an overpayment of compensation has been made to a Guard member on leave or absence for active duty. This bill will allow more time, and it will sunset in 2015. And one key components due to the amendments were that it exempts lower-ranking troops from being the subject of unfair overpayment recovery unless they participated in or at fault for the overpayment. The bill has received unanimous support, and I ask for your aye vote on this important legislation.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 63, no 0 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 106 has been dispensed with. File items 107 and 108 passed temporarily. File items 109 through 113 has been dispensed with. File item 114, file item 114, SB 402. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 402 by Senator Vargas, an act relating to outdoor advertising.
Mr. V. Manuel Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is a local bill. SB 402 will exempt 3 advertising displays within 1,100 feet of a state highway in Imperial County from the Outdoor Advertising Act. Specifically, this bill addresses an issue in my district where these existing advertising displays were authorized for usage by local governments, but were later ruled to be in violation of the Outdoor Advertising Act. Amendments were taken in Policy Committee to address concerns regarding federal aid, highway funds, and to prohibit the advertising of products, goods, or services intended for adults only. This bill has received support from the Imperial County Board of Supervisors and the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 11. Measure passes. File item 115, SB 543. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 543 by Senator Steinberg and others, an act relating to business and professions and making appropriation therefore.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. SB 543 extends the sunset dates for 7 regulatory agencies within the Department of Consumer Affairs. Specifically, the bill extends to the year 2016 the Contractor State License Board, the California Board of Accountancy, the Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists, and the California Architects Board. The bill also extends the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau to 2015 and the Board of Guide Dogs for the Blind and the State Athletic Commission to 2014. The bill also makes further statutory changes to these agencies based on recommendations of the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development during oversight hearings held earlier this year. In addition, the bill prohibits until 2013 the Physical Therapy Board from taking disciplinary action against a physical therapist working as an employee of a medical corporation, podiatric corporation, or chiropractic corporation. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Wojtkowski.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I rise in support, but I'm cautious about the language. I'm glad that we're extending the deadline in 2013, but I'm cautious about direct access that physical therapist services may be available in California as well as the states, and I hope that the author will continue to work to make sure that that's achieved next year.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Mitchell, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam, and it's my understanding that this is technically just a one-year pause button to allow the legislature to continue the conversation about how best to address the employment status of physical therapists, and so the author does intend to continue the dialogue. And with that, again, I ask for your support.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 10. Measure passes. File item 117, SB 163. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 163 by Senator Evans, an act relating to attorneys.
Mr. Feuer.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is the annual State Bar dues bill. Recall that the bill originates in each house one year than the other. This bill has several features that are worth noting. First, it revises the composition of the Bar's Board of Governors and reduces its size. Second, it actually reduces the fees that bar members pay. And third, it increases a voluntary checkoff by bar members for legal services. The bill has enjoyed strong bipartisan support throughout its journey in the legislature, and I urge that to continue on the floor now.
Mr. Alejo.
Madam Speaker, I also just wanted to speak in support of this bill. It's a good bill that allows the additional voluntary contributions to legal aid services, which are in a pretty dire situation with funding becoming less scarce. As a former legal aid attorney, I just wanted to weigh in on that. Also, on the new changes adding more diversity to the state board that governs the State Bar Association. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 9. Measure passes. File item 118, SB 384. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 384 by Senator Evans, an act relating to civil actions.
Support. Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is a non-controversial measure designed to improve court efficiency. It's supported by both the plaintiffs and the defense counsel. It's enjoyed very strong bipartisan support. Urge your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. Okay, everyone should have the supplemental file. It's file items 201 through 228. We're going to start at the top of the supplemental file. So we're going to do the second reading on the supplemental file. Second reading, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 827.
Committee reports are adopted. Okay, so we're going to go to concurrence in Senate amendments on the supplemental file. File item 202, AB 1423, passed temporarily. File item 203, AB 681, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 681 by Assemblymember Wieckowski, an act relating to above-ground storage tanks.
Mr. Wieckowski.
Madam Speaker, approximately $1.8 million is available for local training and assistance for the above-ground petroleum storage. However, the authority to spend the funds expired in July of 2011. This bill simply extends the disbursement deadline to June 1, 2013. Recent amendments removed all the opposition, and I urge your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 204, AB 520. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 520 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Senate amendments deleted the previous version of this bill relating to sentencing and now clarify that a person with a current wet and reckless violation who has a prior DUI is eligible to participate in the Ignition Interlock Device program after having his or her license suspended for 90 days. Currently, this is offered to persons with a current DUI offense who have had a prior DUI, even though a wet and reckless is a lesser offense. We worked with the DMV and CHP on the language and accepted their requested technical amendments. This is a simple bill to clarify eligibility and has no opposition. I respectfully ask for concurrence in Senate amendments. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 14. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 205, AB 641. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 641 by Assemblymember Fier and others, an act relating to long-term care.
Mr. Fior.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So the Senate amendments on this bill are focused on a key issue of equity. About a month ago or so, the federal government allowed states to take action that this bill would effectuate. Here's what's at issue. For heterosexual couples, if one member of the couple is about to enter a nursing home, the couple is allowed to shift some assets to avoid the remaining spouse either being bankrupt or being homeless. But no such protections exist for same-sex couples, including couples legally married here in California. Federal guidance just issued allows us to change that inequity. So this is a very important bill for the small universe of people it would affect who are senior citizens who confront both the very serious consequences of one spouse entering a nursing home and then the potential further adverse consequences of the other spouse losing her home or key assets and being impoverished. I strongly urge your support for a simple matter of equity so we treat all people who are situated similarly in very serious circumstances the same. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 18. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 206, AB 1164. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1164 by Assemblymember Gordon, an act relating to transportation, make appropriation therefore.
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill would authorize the state to apply for unobligated federal funds to be used for Prop 1B projects in order to avoid the potential forfeiture of these federal funds. Under this proposal, any federal funds that could not otherwise be obligated during a federal fiscal year could be applied to an eligible Prop 1B project, enabling that project to move forward. Then at a future point, when the state could generate additional bond revenue, AB 1164 would require that these funds be used to repay the state highway account for the federal funds that were borrowed. This bill simply allows us to maximize the recapturing of federal dollars to help our highway projects in California, and I respectfully encourage an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 207, AB 152. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 152 by Assemblymember Fuentes and others, an act relating to food banks.
Mr. Fuentes.
Members, AB 152 connects California farmers to California's food banks. The bill received unanimous support on the Senate floor. Senate amendments were technical and clarifying. I ask for your concurrence in Senate amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 208, AB 1182. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1182 by Assemblymember Roger Hernandez and others, an act relating to CalWorks.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. AB 1182 has been sent back to him from the Senate. The only amendments were the addition of co-authors. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 20. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 209, AB 22. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 22 by Assemblymember Mendoza, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I'm here to present AB 22 with Senate amendments. This bill restricts the use of consumer credit reports in the hiring process. Senate amendments change the bill to allow a few more groups of people to have credit checks run on them. These groups include managers, name signatories, someone with access to trade secrets, someone with access to $10,000 or more in cash, and anyone who works with Social Security numbers, birth dates, and other bank information. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 23. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 210, AB 74. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 74 by Assemblymember Amon, Act relating to public events.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 74 would create a statewide standard to give local law enforcement and medical personnel the tools to make large entertainment events on state property, particularly raves, safer in our state. The Senate amendments provide exemptions for state and county fairs, create an incentive for local agency to adopt the current CDFA best practices, and reduce the state's cost to produce the threat assessment. In addition, Senate amendments fix the existing cooperative agreement between counties and agricultural inspectors. AB 74 has no opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 61, noes 8. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 211, AB 136. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 136 by Assemblymember Bell and others, an act relating to telecommunications.
Mr. Bell.
Madam Speaker, members, the Senate amendments for this bill, which deals with telecommunication devices for speech-impaired individuals, reduce the cost of this bill and cap the amount the Public Utilities Commission will pay for telecommunications devices, also covered by medical insurance, at the Medi-Cal rate, and gives the Public Utility Commissions up to 2 years to adopt rules. This bill passed the Senate floor 38-0, and we ask for concurrence with Senate amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 69, noes 1. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 212, AB. File item 212, AB 270. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 270 by Assemblymember Perea and others, an act relating to satellite wagering.
Mr. Perea.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. State law prescribes that all satellite facilities shall have a supervisor position during operating hours. This mandatory staffing requirement has created significant financial issues for some of the state's smaller satellite facilities. AB 270 would allow a satellite facility to waive the requirement if, after a public hearing of the Fair Board, it is determined the requirement creates a financial hardship for the satellite. Today, I'm asking for your aye vote in adopting the concurrence amendments that are requested by the Governor's Office, and they would do two things. First, there would be a notification requirement to the California Horse Racing Board 30 days prior to a public hearing to waive the requirement, and second, it would include the name and contact information of the individual assuming the responsibilities of the position of the satellite facility supervisor. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 64, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 213, AB 325. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 325 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, an act relating to employee rights.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. AB 325 on unpaid bereavement leave returns to this House a much more modest measure than when it left. We took several amendments in the Senate. The leave has been reduced from 4 to 3 days. Instead of 13 months, the leave must be taken within 3 months of the death. The leave must be taken concurrent with an employer's existing bereavement leave program or be unpaid. And we have changed the language to be similar to California's Family Medical Leave Act to be more consistent for California employers. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 21. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 214, AB 341. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 341 by Assemblymember Chesbro and others, an act relating to solid waste.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill requires commercial recycling in California and sets a statewide goal of 50% landfill diversion by the year 2020. California has led the nation and the world in our reduction in landfilling of waste. It's created hundreds of thousands of new jobs in this state. To get to 50%, we believe that at least tens of thousands more will be created, as well as helping to fight climate change and reduce many other problems associated with solid waste and resource conservation. So I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 22. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 215, AB 418. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 418 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to tidelands and submerged lands.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 418 authorizes the State Lands Commission to review public trust restrictions at Pier 70 in order to rationalize the location or trust property along the water's edge and terminate the public trust on Seawall Lot 330. Senate amendments added the Seawall Lot 330 provisions. Lot 330 is a 2-acre parcel which is cut off from the waterfront by the Embarcadero and currently serves as a surface parking lot. In 2007, the legislature declared that Seawall Lot 330 was no longer useful to the trust and authorized the port to use the property for non-trust purposes through the year 2094. AB 418 has been unanimously approved by all committees and by both houses. I respectfully ask for concurrence in Senate amendments. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 70, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 216, AB 438. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 438 by Assemblymember Williams and others, an act relating to libraries.
Mr. Williams.
Madam Speaker and members, I rise to present AB 438. Since you last saw this, I worked diligently with the Senate Committee on Governance and Finance and a number of amendments which significantly changed the bill to be a little bit more reasonable. The committee felt that the requirements that savings should be bigger than estimated cost fluctuations and the economic advantage in privatization were too difficult to measure and effectively prevented privatization altogether. I agreed and those provisions were removed. Further, I accepted a sunset date and exempted contracts with nonprofits. These are the reasons the Chair of Governance and Finance is now a co-author of the bill, and conclude there's nothing in this bill that prevents privatization, but it does require disclosure before privatization and proof that it actually saves money. Ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Williams moves the call. File item 217, AB 525. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 525 by Assemblymember Gordon, an act relating to solid waste.
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recent amendments to AB 525 establish the necessary financial accounts for fees and penalties that are collected by CalRecycle. These fees and penalties are associated with the Architectural Paint Recovery Program. Due to a drafting error in last year's AB 1343, these accounts were never established. So this will correct that, provide for the collection of those fees. And it also, AB 525, continues to reauthorize the successful rubberized asphalt concrete grant program to local governments. The amendments are supported by a wide range of individuals. The bill has no known opposition. I respectfully urge an aye vote.
Hearing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, noes 16. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 218, AB 615. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 615 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal and others, an act relating to high-speed rail and making an appropriation therefore.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When last we saw this bill, it would have set forth procedures for acquiring rights-of-way by the High-Speed Rail Authority. Those provisions are no longer in this bill. AB 615 now appropriates $4 million from high-speed rail bonds to support planning, preliminary engineering, environmental work, and public outreach for the Los Angeles to San Diego via Inland Empire high-speed train corridor. AB 615 continues to invest in the good work that has been accomplished in the corridor to date. This appropriation will keep the project moving, keep costs down, support the collaborative efforts already underway, and recognize the importance of public input. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Here we have another high-speed rail item, and just yesterday, the bulk of high-speed rail costs could fall to state from the LA Times. Bottom line is the federal government will probably not be continuing with the funding. This $4 million will hire another group of consultants to work on Phase 2 when Phase 1 has not even begun. Phase 1, we know, has increased from cost from around $30 billion to now up to 67, maybe even more. And that's San Francisco to Los Angeles. Then the Los Angeles to San Diego is Phase 2 that there is no money to complete. Excuse me, Madam Speaker, may I have the... Thank you. So I know everybody's tired, but this is a huge issue. At a time when we are trying to find where we're going to get the money from to fund our education, to fund other local transportation, we're cutting back on all of our cities. They're going to have public safety concerns. We're spending $4 million, although that sounds small in the billions that we spend around here, but $4 million for more consultants. Now, this is not a job creator, and the only reason that we'd be hiring people is to try to gin up more support in the marketing area for high-speed rail, for which the state is going to be on the hook for. Federal government is not going to come and bail us out. They're not going to help us. Now, I had hoped with the new governor, who claims to be frugal, that this project would get some serious vetting. That's turned out not to be quite the case, but I still have hope that he's not going to blow the state out of whack on debt for this high-speed rail project. This $4 million is not what we need to be doing now. It sounds small, but it's huge. It's huge in the overall scope of $4 million will be spent trying to convince your people in your districts how important this is to the state. When it's mowing down agricultural land, it got booted out, run out of town on a rail in the peninsula up in Palo Alto. And there's no plan, there's no design, there's no money. It's just money going out the door to continually pump a high-speed marketing machine. So I ask you members to please call halt to this. Ms. Lowenthal's bill has been amended. It was a reasonable bill that put items over to the governor's office, Department of Transportation, actually. But right now, it's just allocating more money for more marketing. So I respectfully request a no vote.
Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank the author for bringing this forward. This is incredibly important to Southern California. Over the past year, as was stated, the Southern California High-Speed Inland Corridor Group has been working diligently and hard to find the best alignment for the corridor. The funding directly affects the following transportation agencies: the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, San Bernardino Associated Governments, Riverside County Transportation Commission, the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, and the San Diego Association of Governments. I would really ask for your support, and I vote. Thank you.
Ms. Galgiani.
In just 12 short months, we'll have 120,000 high-speed rail jobs starting on the Central Valley backbone of this project, 120,000 jobs of workers that will be paying taxes for the services that we need to run the state. This bill is very important so that the segment between San Diego and Los Angeles can start the environmental and engineering work so that those communities have ample time to work with the authority to sort through concerns and problems so that they're not rushed through the process. I support this bill.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Lowenthal, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I respectfully request an aye vote from my colleagues.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 20. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 219, AB 634. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 634 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to vertebrate pests.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 634 seeks to give farmers a humane way, an affordable option for controlling burrowing pests. It received no votes on this floor and passed the Senate floor 38-1. I ask for your aye vote and concurrence.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 220, AB 809. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 809 by Assemblymember Fewer, an act relating to firearms.
Mr. Fewer.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So this bill is back on concurrence. The principal change in the Senate is to delay the implementation of the bill for 1 year. And here's what the bill does, although we've already had this discussion on this floor. 35 police chiefs and Sheriff Baca from Los Angeles strongly support this measure because of the proportion of long guns that are used in crime. This bill is a very simple bill. Currently, if you acquire a handgun, the record of your purchase of that gun is retained by law enforcement. However, a long gun record is purposely destroyed within a few days of its being put together. All this bill does is create parity so that we treat long guns and handguns the same. It has no application to any current owner of a handgun, of the long gun rather. The bill is only prospective in its application. But it is very important for law enforcement, which is why it enjoys such broad support up and down the state. It's important because law enforcement needs to know who has a weapon when they are dealing with prohibited persons. Already, sweeps of prohibited persons for weapons reveal a huge percentage of long guns in their possession. It's important. When we had a press event on this, a police chief said, you know, I want my officers to know when they go to a domestic violence scene if it's likely there's a gun at that scene, and we're purposely not conveying a huge amount of information to them that could jeopardize their safety. Bottom line is this. This bill simply requires a nominal amount of additional information to be provided: make, model, and serial number of the gun. It won't inconvenience any current owner nor any prospective owner. It's a very mild amount of time. When this bill was brought up previously, it was argued that it might inconvenience a gun store, but in fact, at the moment, gun stores have to have two sets of records, one for long guns and one for handguns. This would make it easier for them by only having one set of records with a nominal amount of data. It would take about 10 seconds to collect. So, back on concurrence, as I say, the Senate amendments on this bill simply delay implementation for 1 year, and I urge an aye vote for a measure our public safety professionals are telling us is imperative for law enforcement officer safety.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. You know, I think it was Franklin who said that if you're willing to give up essential liberties in order to gain safety, then you deserve neither. And I think that every time I hear these faulty arguments, I hear arguments about police chiefs. Well, that doesn't square with the Constitution, which says that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And we use the excuse of crime. The problem is there's no epidemic of violence by long arms. You can make an argument for handguns, except that none of the criminals ever show up to register them. They don't take the course. They buy them out of the trunks of cars. And you know, our law enforcement community, particularly at the federal level, recently showed their absolute contempt for law-abiding citizens when they allowed guns to be walked back into Mexico and put in the hands of the cartel. So those who are charged with enforcing our laws have no regard for them. So I don't think we need any more laws. And in fact, we've talked on this floor many times today about needless regulations and burdens on business. Firearms retailers, they pay sales tax. They collect sales tax. They employ people in this state. They don't need another burden. We don't need a whole bunch of more paperwork that is going to serve no purpose except to identify to law enforcement those who own guns. And I object to that. I believe we ought to live in a free society where the government ultimately fears the people and not the other way around. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I have a better solution than this amendment that delays the implementation 1 year. Simply vote no and you will delay the implementation forever, and that's what we truly need.
Mr. Mendoza.
I rise in support of this bill. I want to thank the author for bringing it forward. This is not about being able to carry owning a weapon and not registering it. That's pretty extreme. But this allows the opportunity that if you do own one of these long handguns and you lose the paperwork and you got to prove it that you own it, well, guess what? If you go and try to request a record, they don't have them because they don't keep them. So it works in the other way around as well. We do need, and it does come a time where you have to present to a judge or wherever you get that weapon belongs to you, and you don't have the paperwork. You have to get it somewhere, and this is where this bill comes in handy. And I appreciate the author bringing it forward.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Fiore, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, a couple arguments were made that should be addressed. First, that this is an infringement on liberties. All the bill says is when you buy a long gun in a process where you currently have to provide your name and your address and so forth, that you merely need to add the nature of the gun to the information that you're already required to provide. An infringement of liberties is hard to argue that that's an infringement of liberties. And then it was said there's no need for this statute because long guns aren't involved in crime. In 2009, 11,500 long guns in this state were entered into a crime gun database. 11,500 guns involved in crimes, long guns that will be covered by this bill. Don't you want your law enforcement personnel to know where those guns are when they go to the scene of a domestic violence dispute, for example? Or is our support for law enforcement limited to when it seems convenient for the sake of arguments on this floor? I urge an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 26. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 221, AB 947. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 947 by Assemblymember Solorio, an act relating to workers' compensation.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill allows up to 240 weeks of temporary disability benefits rather than 104 weeks for some injured workers who, through no fault of their own, require surgery or time to recover from surgery after the 104 weeks of temporary disability has lapsed. The amendments in the Senate narrowed the bill so as to decrease costs. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 24. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 222, AB 1053. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1053 by Assemblymember Gordon, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. AB 1053 would update locally administered fees. Amendments taken in the Senate phase in the increase in the vital record fees over a period of 3 years, clarify the existing share of this fee revenue between state and local agencies, and correct an error in code identified by the Department of Public Health. It's critical that this legislature do all that it can to provide local agencies with general fund relief and allow them to recover costs for direct services. I respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 22. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 223, AB 1112. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1112 by Assemblymember Huffman and others, an act relating to oil spills.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is the bill which is critically needed in order to provide funding to maintain solvency in the state's fund that provides all the resources to sustain our oil spill prevention efforts. When it left this House a few weeks back, I committed to working with the opposition, and it ultimately was successful. We took amendments that reduced the amount of the fee. There is now a 3-year sunset on the bill so that we'll have a chance to review it in a few years with the benefit of a lot of new auditing information that will come to light again as a result of the transparency and accountability provisions we put in here, and I'm happy to say there's no longer any opposition. We need this bill to make sure that California is prepared to prevent a potentially catastrophic oil spill, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
Mr. Nestande.
I rise in support of the bill. I think we can drill responsibly for oil offshore, but I also believe we should be good stewards in case that there is a spill, and so therefore I support the use of this fund. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions. Oh, sorry, Dr. Halderman.
Question to the author.
Without objection.
What percentage of this fee goes toward cleanup as opposed to prevention?
0. This is 100% prevention. There's a separate trust fund that addresses cleanup.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 224, AB 1121. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1121 by Assemblymember Pan, an act relating to dog licensing.
Dr. Pan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 1121 is back for concurrence. This is a bill to promote licensing of dogs. Also requires that high-volume pet sellers, dog sellers, actually have to report the information to the animal shelter. This is already information that they are currently required by existing law to maintain. And Senate amendments basically include a fine for noncompliance and other technical changes. Thank you. Appreciate your vote.
Mr. Garrick.
Question for the author.
Without objection.
I am reading through my analysis here. It identifies that this is now going to require a monthly permit a monthly report by the Humane Society, rescue groups, societies for the prevention of cruelty to animals, and even pet dealers to the local licensing agency on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what is their present requirement?
So currently there is no present requirement for any high-volume pet owner pet seller to report this information to the local county shelter. They actually are required by law to maintain and keep the records, but they don't have to transmit them anywhere. And it's been shown in a pilot in San Jose that actually by getting the information to the shelter dog control agency in the county, that they've been able to greatly boost dog licensing rates, which then improve safety as well as bring in more revenue to help maintain dog control activities and the dog shelters.
Thank you. On my own time, I just would like to say that this is another example of adding more bureaucracy unnecessarily. The records are kept on site. The individuals, if they're complying with the law, there is no additional record keeping necessary, much less transmitting on a monthly basis every 30 days what your records are, whether you did or did not add any animals, subtract any animals, or any animals were born. So I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Dr. Pan, you may close.
Thank you. I would, again, this is a very important bill to ensure that we have the kind of resources we need, that the fees, right now, many counties have to supplement funds from their general funds to help support their shelters because of the fact that there's very low rates of licensing. It's actually about 20% in the whole state. So we need to boost those licensing rates. As far as the reason for monthly reports is that one of the things that this bill does is that we're trying to facilitate licensing of puppies before, and you need to be able to do it on a frequent enough basis so that the follow-up will allow to remind the dog owners that they need to get them licensed in a timely manner. So that's the purpose for the monthly report, which I don't think is a particularly onerous one since they already have the records. And I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 25. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 225, AB 1220. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1220 by Assemblymember Alejo and others, an act relating to land use.
Mr. Alejo.
Madam Chair and members, AB 1220 amends California's housing element law. This bill will help ensure that every city and county does its part to improve the regulatory environment for the construction of new housing in California. Recent amendments change the statute of limitations from 5 to 3 years as a compromise. These address the concerns of the opposition that the previous 5-year statute of limitations was too long. This bill is supported by the California Association of Realtors, environmental groups like NRDC, and business groups like the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and the Bay Area Council. Ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 21. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 226, AB 1389. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1389 by Assemblymember Allen, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, Madam Speaker, fellow members. AB 1389 is the DUI checkpoint bill where we're trying to regularize the checkpoint requirements throughout the state. We took a number of amendments in the Senate side, and probably the most important amendment we took for law enforcement was to stipulate that this bill does not limit or expand the authority of an officer to conduct a test for impairment that is otherwise permitted by law. That amendment was taken at the request of the Highway Patrol. The requirements of 1389 now are in conformance with the procedure manual for the CHP. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, if you love drunk drivers, you will love this bill. It makes it harder to stop drunk drivers by tinkering with these checkpoints. It removes the authority of the Board of Supervisors to make determinations for coordinated stops. It imposes a whole bunch of regulations, requirements on law enforcement, ensuring lighting, warning signs, that there have to be official vehicles, officers in uniform. These provide great opportunities for defense attorneys, and that's what this is for. And that does deter the enforcement of these stops and the prosecution of those who are found under the influence at such stop, to let them get off scot-free. By technicality, yes. It limits them to after dusk or another reasonable time. It requires 48 hours general pre-announcement and then a 2-hour specific announcement. So look out, drunk driver, be on alert. We're going to tell you exactly where the checkpoints are going to be. And worse, it removes probable cause if you purposefully make a legal U-turn to avoid this checkpoint. You know what you're doing. That's probable cause. They see you turn to avoid. But that then would not constitute probable cause for prosecution. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are trying to make it easier for drunk drivers. I submit this is an easy no vote if you want to protect you and your family.
Mr. Norby.
I rise in support of this bill, Madam Speaker. The freedom to drive, the freedom of movement, without being arbitrarily stopped, without probable cause, is not a technicality. It's a basic right. And those in this body that oppose unnecessary government control and interference in our lives should support this bill. Many freedom-loving states, solid red states across this country, like Wyoming and Texas, don't even allow DUI checkpoints. They don't exist in the entire state. And there are no significant levels of drunk driving there that are any higher than they are here. You're driving down the street. There's a checkpoint, quarter of a mile ahead. You're making a right turn to go to your house. Police officer sees you. Oh, you're trying to avoid the checkpoint. Is that immediate probable cause? This law says no, and it shouldn't be. 2 in the afternoon, you're on your way to work. You're on your way to an important appointment. DUI checkpoint ahead. You want to avoid the checkpoint. Most of us would. You make a right turn, a left turn, suddenly you're going to be stopped. Probable cause. This bill is about freedom. It's about placing reasonable limits on law enforcement. Now, I know this is a tool for law enforcement. Everything is a tool for law enforcement. But a free society is about the reasonable tools they have to keep us free and the reasonable rights we have to be free of unnecessary and arbitrary tools. We know all about the abuses of these DUI checkpoints. Automobiles have been seized. Families, whole families have been left at the curb whose moms weren't driving drunk but didn't have certain things about the car, insurance, license, whatever, and cars haven't been returned. I voted for this bill before. I'll vote for it again. And if you were a driver with a DUI checkpoint ahead and wanted to try to avoid it for a perfectly legitimate reason at 3 in the afternoon to get to work on time, I don't think that that's probable cause that you're committing a misdemeanor. And I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. You know, we've seen a lot of these DUI checkpoint type pieces of legislation. I just want to make a couple things clear. Driving's not a right. It's a privilege. Driving is a privilege in this country. It's not a right. It's kind of like college. College isn't a right. I know a lot of people will argue with me about that one, but as the Supreme Court has stated, when DUI checkpoints went all the way up to the Supreme Court, they are legal. You can do checkpoints. So let's understand this bill doesn't have anything to do with getting rid of checkpoints. If you don't like checkpoints, then write a piece of legislation to get rid of DUI checkpoints. But right now, they're legal. And so let's look at what the bill does. Let's look at what we're trying to do with these DUI checkpoints. Everyone here would like to get drunk drivers off the road. I think we could agree upon that. But let's understand, when a police officer stops you at a DUI checkpoint, that doesn't just mean that all I can do is see if you're drunk and driving. My status as a police officer doesn't stop there. I have a legal investigation. If something else is happening, you better hope that I take action. If I stop you at a DUI checkpoint and there's somebody dead in the passenger seat, but you're not drunk, do I let you go? If there are drugs and guns in the passenger seat, does that mean he's not drunk? So that should stop everything right there? All these DUI checkpoint bills are saying that police officers should only be looking at if you're drunk and if you're driving. And if you're not, if you don't have a driver's license that can't impound your car, if you have a suspended driver's license for drunk driving. I think that we're going down a very slippery slope on this. If you don't like checkpoints, then fine, write a piece of legislation to get rid of checkpoints. But understand, these are tools for local municipalities to use. They're not a tool for us to wield however we want up here.
Dr. Halderman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have sobriety checkpoints in Fresno. It's a tool of law enforcement. When I drive through, it's slightly annoying because I have to slow down, and then they have to look at me, and I'm a little nervous because it's a police officer, and then they decide I'm okay, and they let me through. And that's inconvenient. And I would prefer to have that than what removing those checkpoints would result in, because it's a lot worse than inconvenience. Your rights stop at the end of my nose. You don't have the right to drink and drive. So if the issue is that checkpoints shouldn't be used for anything but anti-drunk driving, we'll work on that legislation, as my colleague suggested. But to do something that makes it easier for people to, just for the convenience sake of avoiding a little slowdown through a checkpoint, perhaps kill someone, I don't understand the opposition. I request a no vote.
Mr. V. Manuel Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I think this bill is not necessarily about checkpoints. I think we all support DUI checkpoints. But the issue has become one where law enforcement are using these checkpoints not only for DUIs, but also to look to see if people have licenses. And furthermore, they also use these checkpoints to see if individuals have citizenship to our country. And so they use these checkpoints and they impound vehicles and don't allow opportunities for individuals to figure out how they can perhaps call someone, a friend, that can take that vehicle home. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that our author here, and I agree with him, is that we don't necessarily disagree with the fact that we should have DUI checkpoints, but we do disagree with the fact that we do have law enforcement and communities using this as a racket to make money. That is a reality, and that's what's happening. And as well, they use this as a way to figure out if an individual or individuals are citizens or not. This is a Latino Caucus priority bill, and I ask you for an aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. You know, it really doesn't matter whether you're in the country legally or not. It really doesn't matter whether or not you are a good person or not. If you're driving drunk and if you kill someone, then at that point we have created chaos and loss and destruction within families. And that really is the ultimate goal of these sobriety checkpoints. And I think we ought to let local law enforcement implement them wherever, whenever, in whatever format they choose. Because I'm sick and tired of picking up my newspaper and reading about children who are getting run over on bicycles in the middle of the day I'm sick and tired of reading about a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, right in my community. The entire family was run over by a guy who was drunk, and he happened to be in the country illegally. And if he had been pulled over and if he had been removed, he wouldn't have killed that 2-year-old toddler. And I think that this bill goes too far. And we need to trust our local law enforcement and let them have the tools to protect our communities. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Allen, you may close.
This bill is the codification of the Ingersoll case that basically put down the guidelines in the 1980s as to how to properly conduct DUI checkpoints. We need to have uniformity through the state. We need to have situations where the police are not, or local law enforcement authorities, at odds with their communities. This is a good bill. If anything, it's going to focus law enforcement's resources towards getting drunk drivers off the road. So I would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 21. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 227, AB 1398. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1398 by Assemblymember Chesbro, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, currently there is an exemption in state law that allows pear packing plants in Lake County to employ minors 16 and 17 years old for up to 10 hours a day and 60 hours a week when school is not in session during peak harvest season. The exemption is set to sunset in January of 2012, and this bill would extend the sunset date to January 2017. The bill was on consent in both houses, but is back for technical amendments at the request of the Department of Industrial Relations. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 59, noes 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. And file item 228, AB 1403. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1403 by Assembly Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to civil actions.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is an easy one. Chamber of Commerce and consumer attorneys joined together to support a bill that will make various reforms to improve civil procedure in court proceedings. Senate amendments provide greater specificity regarding some of those proceedings and also set forth a procedure by which certain parties can recover some costs. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions. Oh, sorry, Mr. Wagner.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill carries a none recommendation. I just want to say to my colleagues on my side of the aisle, it makes some good changes. I'm supportive of it and urge you to vote aye as well.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 1. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 202. Going back to file item 202, we passed temporarily. AB 1423. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1423 by Assemblymember Perea, an act relating to taxation, declaring an urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Perea.
Madam Speaker and members, AB 1423 was amended in the Senate to conform California's income tax law to the federal law relating to mutual funds. Last December, Congress unanimously passed the Regulated Investment Company Modernization Act to change obsolete and inefficient provisions of federal income law applicable to mutual fund companies. Some of the changes in federal law, which AB 1423 would mirror, include allowing mutual funds to do the following: carry over capital losses indefinitely, just like individual investors can, pay a penalty rather than lose their status as a mutual fund for minor, inadvertent infractions, and defer late year losses to the next taxable year. AB 1423 is needed to reconcile the inconsistencies between the California and federal tax laws, to keep California mutual funds competitive with other states, and to streamline tax laws for California companies and families. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I heard this bill in committee. There is a section that isn't exactly perfect, but on the whole, which pertains to changes in carryover rules. What happens is you have to, instead of using your oldest carryovers going forward, you have to use your newest ones if you've got a lost carryover. And so without getting too technical, you could end up losing some of that carryover benefit. But the industry groups are really clamoring for these changes because the cost of the differences between the state and the federal are, on the whole, more expensive than what some of the increase in the taxes would be. So it is a good bill, and I request support for the measure. Thank you.
Dr. Halderman.
Brief question of the author.
Without objection.
For how many years is the tax increase in this bill imposed?
I don't believe that there is a timeline on that, so I believe it continues.
Okay, to my reading, it was 3 years.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 7. Senate amendments are concurred in. On the ayes 58, noes 7 on the urgency. Ayes 58, noes 7 on the measure. Senate amendments are concurred in. File 201. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to allow Mr. Furutani to take up SB 827 without reference to file for purposes of third reading today.
Mr. Hagan. Without objection. File item 201, SB 827. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 827 by Senator Simitian, an act relating to public employees' retirement.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Members on both sides of the aisles, we have been dealing with the issue of pension reform. Different bills have come forward and have gone through the process. We have several on our list of bills to deal with. But in discussions with the governor's office, the speaker, and the president pro tem, the thought of putting them up one at a time rather than in a comprehensive package and looking beyond where these legislative bills are at this point really makes sense. So with SB 827, it expresses legislative intent to convene a conference committee to craft responsible, comprehensive legislation to reform state and local pension systems. My bill, AB 340, is returning from the Senate with the same language that was in this bill so that we can have this conference committee and then have the conference committee work with those that are interested to put together a comprehensive package about pension reform. I urge and I vote. Thank you.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, to our Republican caucus, this is kind of like a technical motion where we send bills back and forth that will die. To set up the conference committee, we recommend you just vote no on this for right now.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 51, noes 21. Measure passes. Okay, we're going to lift calls, members, and then call it a night. Are members ready to lift calls? Mr. Mendoza, Mr. Furutani, Mr. Huffman, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Huffman. All members back in the chamber. Okay, here we go. File item 19, AB 86. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 26. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 5, AB 873. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 73, noes 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 109, SB 263. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 51, noes 12. Measure passes. File item 216, AB 438. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 24. Senate amendments are concurred in. And file item 223, AB 1112. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 22. Senate amendments are concurred in. Okay, I have an announcement. Members will receive an invitation to a reception held by Governor Brown upon adjournment of session tomorrow. Details will be provided to your offices in the morning. Number 2, the Utilities and Commerce Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. in room 437 to hear SJR 13 Vargas. And floor session tomorrow will be at 10 a.m. Session will be at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Utilities and Commerce Committee will meet tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. in room 437. And there will be a reception hosted by Governor Brown upon adjournment of session tomorrow. Tomorrow, Friday, September 9th, is the last day for any bill to be passed in 2011. Sorry, it's late. Sorry, we have one more motion. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, at the request of the author, I request unanimous consent to rescind today's floor vote on file item 106, SB 244, in order to return the bill to the third reading file.
Without objection.
I also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow Mr. Pereira to take up file item 106, SB 244, as amended in mock-up form without reference to file for the purpose of third reading today.
Mr. Hagman? Without objection? Okay, so file item 106, SB 244 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 244 with amendments by Assemblymember Wolk.
Mr. Perea.
Madam Speaker and members, the amendments for SB 244 are as follows. It addresses chaptering out issues. Thank you, and I ask you for your aye vote on these amendments.
Without objection.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we can take a voice vote on those amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. Okay, all other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that this House stands adjourned until Friday, September 9th at 10 a.m. Quorum calls lifted.